The moment the blade tore through his lower thigh, Aaron Kessler knew it was bad, not because of the pain though it was excruciating, but because of the silence that followed. The operating bay of the Trelvani medical cruiser had been humming with activity just seconds ago. Now, it was as if the entire ship had paused. Aaron grit his teeth and looked down. Blood was pouring freely from the gash, soaking the sterile floor in thick arterial ribbons. A long, jagged shard of metal, no doubt a remnant from the collapsed mining rig on Laratha 6, was still embedded in his leg. It pulsed slightly with each heartbeat. He exhaled shakily and turned his attention to the 4 Trelvani medics surrounding him. They weren't moving. Guys, he rasped, voice catching in his throat. The tallest of them, Nezrik, if he remembered right, stood stiff as a statue, translucent blue skin flushed to a pale lavender. Another, smaller one named Vel was pressed against the far wall, eyes locked on the blood pooling across the tiles, knees visibly trembling. Seriously, Aaron muttered, then louder, my leg is kind of open over here. Still nothing. Aaron's hand trembled as he reached for the emergency supply cart beside the medbed. He couldn't see the top of it, but there had to be something on it he could use. He dragged it closer with a groan, the wheels squeaking against the floor. Vel made a high-pitched noise and turned away. Are you scared of blood? Aaron asked, incredulous. Nezrik's mouth opened but no sound came out. The medic finally managed a strangled whisper. You are leaking. Aaron blinked. Yeah, that's what happens when flesh gets sliced open. You are not supposed to do that, not here. I didn't schedule this, Nezrik, Aaron snapped. I was under a 6-ton steel beam 3 hours ago. Another medic, this one with a cluster of tendrils instead of arms, began to sway faintly, eyes glassy. Too much fluid, too red, too fast. Aaron's breath was growing shorter. The blood loss was getting to him. He needed to act fast. All right, he said, voice tight with pain. Someone get me a mirror and a stapler. Vel turned slowly as though unsure if she'd heard correctly. A what? A mirror, Aaron repeated, and a stapler. Why would you require reflective glass and a binding implement during active trauma? Nezrik asked. So I can see the wound, Aaron said through clenched teeth, and close it. You intend to seal your own laceration, Vel squeaked. Because you're all frozen like statues and I'm actively dying, Aaron growled. Yes, that's the plan. Nezrik stumbled toward the supply drawer with robotic motions, returning seconds later with a reflective diagnostic tool and a standard issue containment stapler typically used for packaging medical samples. This is not sterilized for internal use, Nezrik warned. Aaron took both without a word and adjusted the mirror until he could see the wound clearly. It was gaping, the muscle exposed, the skin jagged. He was going to need at least a dozen staples. His hands were slick with blood and the stapler slipped once before he got a firm grip. All right, he muttered, here goes. The first staple sent a bolt of white-hot pain through his leg. He grunted, biting down on the sleeve of his uniform. The second one was worse. By the fifth, tears were running down his cheeks. One of the Trellvani made a whimpering sound. Aaron didn't stop, he couldn't afford to. By the time he finished the 12th staple, his vision was swimming. He dropped the tool and leaned back against the medbed, breathing shallow, rapid. The bleeding had slowed to a sluggish ooze, which was an improvement. His leg throbbed with every heartbeat. Now, he said weakly, how about someone wraps this up before I pass out? Vel inched closer, holding a roll of sterile gauze like it was a venomous creature. She began winding it around his leg with shaking hands. That was deeply unsettling, Nezrik said. Aaron closed his eyes. Welcome to field medicine. The silence stretched again, awkward and thick. You have injured yourself before, Vel asked suddenly as she tied off the bandage. Aaron cracked one eye open. This week. Why did you not call for aid sooner? Nezrik asked. I did. You were all there when the rig collapsed. You saw me get pulled out. We assumed you were stable. Aaron barked a dry laugh. Well, next time I'll make sure to announce my internal bleeding. The medbay doors hissed open and a 5th Trelvani entered, taller than the others and wearing a captain's crest on its chest panel. Its name was Relak, and it looked between the frozen medics and the blood-spattered human with visible confusion. What happened here? Aaron raised a hand, then let it drop. Your med team panicked at the sight of blood. I had to patch myself up with office supplies. Relak turned to Nezrik. Is this accurate? Nezrik shifted uncomfortably. We were unprepared for the volume. He should not contain so much. It's normal, Aaron said wearily. Relak approached, peering down at Aaron's leg. You closed this yourself. Mirror and a stapler, Aaron muttered. Not my finest work, but I'll live. Relak turned slowly to Nezrik. Begin trauma training protocols immediately. Focus on high fluid scenarios. Vel raised a hand hesitantly. Do we have to watch more human injuries? Yes, Relak said firmly. Study them, understand them, because the next time I expect medical personnel to respond faster than office supplies. Aaron chuckled weakly, then winced. His leg was beginning to swell under the bandage. He was going to need proper stitching, antibiotics, and real pain relief. Can I get, actual treatment now, he asked, from someone who won't faint? Relak gestured to Vel, administer local anesthetic, then begin wound reversal and suture alignment. Vel swallowed hard, nodded, and moved to the wall console. Aaron leaned back and let his head rest against the medbed. He didn't feel victorious. He felt tired, cold, and nauseated, but at least the bleeding had stopped for now. Stapler, he muttered, eyes closing. Next time, maybe just keep that closer to the med supplies. None of the Trelvani responded, but seconds later he heard the soft click of a sterilizer activating. At least they were learning. 3 days later, Aaron limped into the Trelvani Diagnostics chamber wearing a borrowed pair of thermal shorts and a grimace. The bandage on his thigh bulged slightly under the fabric, and he was fairly certain someone had applied the adhesive wrap with the enthusiasm of a drunk octopus. At least it wasn't bleeding anymore. Much. The chamber was colder than usual, and the overhead lights flickered with a sickly green hue. A trio of Trelvani technicians waited near a low diagnostic platform, staring at him with expressions that hovered somewhere between apprehension and awe. One of them, a squat, oblong creature with mottled gray skin and a cluster of glassy nodules where eyebrows might have been, held a dermal scanner like it might explode. Aaron sighed. You're not going to faint if I take the bandage off, are you? The gray one blinked all 6 eyes. We have reviewed your species' trauma responses extensively since the incident. Good, because I'm not doing another office supply surgery just to prove a point. A second technician, taller and covered in iridescent scales that shimmered like oil on water, motioned toward the platform. Please recline. We must assess internal tissue integrity and possible foreign matter infiltration. Aaron climbed on, wincing as he adjusted his leg. Any chance you learned how to use an anesthetic that doesn't make me taste colors for 12 hours? That was a miscalculated dosage to mass ratio, the iridescent one replied. You appear denser than our models predicted. Great, I'll add unexpectedly dense to my resume. The scanner whined softly as it passed over his thigh. A fourth technician joined them, a spindly, pink-hued being with a translucent skullcap and fingers like uncooked spaghetti. It peered at the display, then made a low, vibrating sound that Aaron had come to associate with confusion. There is a minor metallic signature embedded near the femoral sheath, it said, possibly a fragment from the initial injury. Figures, Aaron muttered. So what's the plan? You gonna pull it out, or am I doing that too? The technician hesitated. We are evaluating. You've had 3 days. We were uncertain whether you would attempt further self-directed surgery. I've been busy not dying. The gray one cleared its throat or made a sound that passed for one. Would you prefer chemical sedation during the extraction? That depends, Aaron said. Is it the same stuff that made me think the ceiling was melting? No, said the iridescent one. This is a refined variant. It merely causes temporary euphoria and mild hallucinations of aquatic environments. Mild. Only 1 in 18 subjects reports the sensation of drowning. Aaron stared at them. The iridescent technician shifted, perhaps local numbing instead. Yeah, let's do the one where I don't hallucinate sea creatures trying to bargain for my teeth. Spaghetti fingers retrieved a small injector and pressed it gently against Aaron's leg. Within seconds, the area went cold and distant, like it belonged to someone else. He watched as they prepped a narrow extraction probe and activated a microfield to stabilize the surrounding tissue. You know, on Earth we just use forceps and gauze, Aaron said. Maybe a magnet if we're lucky. The gray technician tilted its head. That seems barbaric. So does letting someone bleed out while 4 trained medical staff have a collective existential crisis. No one replied. The probe entered his leg with a faint hiss. Aaron couldn't feel it, but he watched the screen as the fragment glimmered under the surface. The tool moved with surgical precision, guided by a series of minuscule pulses. After a few tense seconds, it emerged with a sliver of dark metal clamped in its tip. The technician dropped it into a containment vial. Foreign object successfully removed. Great, now can you fix the rest of it before I start walking like a cartoon pirate? We will initiate tissue knitting, said the iridescent one. Subdermal regeneration will require 4 hours. 4, can I move around during that? Absolutely not. Aaron groaned, you people ever heard of duct tape? The pink one looked at him in horror. You would bind a wound with industrial adhesives. Only when I'm in a hurry. The gray one leaned closer. You are intentionally difficult to categorize. Your survival methods contradict every protocol we study. Yeah, well, your protocols don't work when someone's stuck under a mining beam with half a leg left. Spaghetti fingers began applying a series of dermal pads along the wound. They emitted soft pulses of light that slowly stitched the skin together from the inside out. Aaron watched, fascinated despite himself. You always treat injuries without assistance, the iridescent one asked. Not always, but I was a combat medic before the UDA drafted me into this diplomatic nightmare. Combat, the gray one echoed. You have experience in deliberate violence. More like cleaning up after it, field triage, rapid evac, mass casualty stuff. The pink one paused mid-application. Then why did you not inform us of your qualifications? Because I didn't think I'd have to explain how to handle a basic laceration to an interstellar medical crew. The technicians exchanged glances. We assumed humans were fragile, said the iridescent one. Aaron snorted, you really need to update your assumptions. The dermal pads pulsed a final time and powered down. The wound was now a faint seam of pinkish scar tissue, warm to the touch but no longer open. Aaron sat up carefully. Is it safe to walk? Limited weight bearing is acceptable, said the gray one, but avoid strenuous activity. Got it, no interpretive dance routines for a few days. The technicians stared blankly. Aaron swung his legs off the platform. The floor was still cold as hell. He picked up his shirt from a nearby chair and pulled it over his head. Next time someone gets hurt, maybe don't stand there blinking like you've seen a ghost. We have adjusted our training modules accordingly, said Spaghetti Fingers. Good, because I'm not always going to be the one blading. As he limped toward the chamber doors, a soft chime echoed from the wall console. One of the technicians tapped it. There has been a containment breach in the hydroponics bay. A human maintenance worker has suffered extremity damage. Aaron paused without turning. Extend. Digit loss, possibly multiple fingers. He exhaled, you've got it right. The gray one hesitated, we would prefer supervision. Aaron turned around, already pulling his shirt back off. Show me the way. They hurried down the corridor, Aaron hopping slightly to avoid putting full weight on his leg. As they approached the hydroponics wing, the scent of scorched vegetation and ozone filtered into the hallway. Inside, a young human engineer sat on the floor, clutching a blood-soaked towel with a look of stunned disbelief. Beside him, 3 Trellvani were hovering, none of them moving closer than 2 meters. Aaron stepped in, crouched beside the injured man, and peeled the towel back gently. Middle and ring finger, he said, clean sever, no cauterization, where the severed tissue. One of the Trelvani pointed to a nutrient bin. Aaron retrieved the fingers, still mostly intact, and wrapped them in a chilled med cloth. Prepograph tray, we're going to try reattachment. The technicians moved with slightly more confidence this time. No one gagged, no one screamed. Aaron looked at the young engineer. What's your name? Peters. All right, Peters, you're going to be fine. Just hold still and don't pass out on me. Peters nodded faintly. The iridescent technician handed Aaron a sterilized suture kit. He took it without hesitation. Let's show them how humans do it, he muttered. And this time none of the aliens flinched. Peters had his fingers back. They weren't perfect, his middle one bent oddly at the first knuckle, and the ring finger had a slight tremor when he tried to make a fist, but they were attached, pink and warm. Aaron called that a win. 3 days had passed since the hydroponics incident. The medbay now looked almost unrecognizable, cleaner, quieter, with the vague scent of lavender permeating the recycled air. Apparently some Trelvani found human blood easier to handle when associated with calming pheromones. The scent dispensers were a compromise. Aaron didn't complain. He sat on a stool in the corner, leg elevated on a padded crate, one hand wrapped around a mug of lukewarm nutrient broth. Across from him, Nesric stood stiff-backed, holding a small, rectangular package wrapped in sterilized cloth. "We have prepared an acknowledgement," Nesric said, offering it with both hands. Aaron took it, setting the mug aside. He unwrapped the cloth, revealing a compact emergency kit: gauze, antiseptic spray, trauma shears, and a miniature stapler. "It's a field kit," Nesric added, "for immediate human injuries. We studied your improvisation and created a version aligned with Trelvani sterility protocols, no adhesives." Aaron turned the stapler over in his hands. It was sleek, silver, and bore a tiny inscription in Trelvani script across the handle. He didn't need to know how to read it to understand the sentiment. "Thanks," he said, "I'll try not to need it." "We hope you never do," Nesric replied, "but if it happens again, we will not hesitate." "Glad to hear it. The last thing I want is another impromptu surgery in a hallway." Vel entered from the corridor, a tray balanced in both hands. She set it down on the nearby table, revealing a collection of transparent vials containing various colored fluids. "We've synthesized human-compatible clotting agents," she said, "tested them on inert tissue samples, rapid coagulation within 12 seconds. Aaron raised an eyebrow, and no one passed out during testing. "No," Vel's voice was firm. "We wore tinted visors, and we kept a containment barrier between the samples and our olfactory nodes. Whatever gets the job done." Vel hesitated, then tapped the side of one vial. "Would you be willing to help us test dosage on live tissue?" Aaron blinked. "You want to cut me open again?" "No," she said quickly, "just a dermal abrasion, enough to measure clotting response on warm, vascularized skin." He set the stapler down and extended his arm without a word. Vel retrieved a sterile blade and gently dragged it across the inside of his forearm, no deeper than a paper cut. A thin line of red welled up. Nesric applied a single drop of the clotting agent. The blood stopped in 4 seconds. Aaron whistled low. "That's faster than anything we've got planet-side." "It binds with your platelets," Vel said, "amplifies their cohesion." Nesric added, "We modeled it after the excretions of a carnivorous lichen on Silac 4. It immobilizes prey by sealing wounds before they can bleed out." Aaron stared. "You use space mold to invent superglue for humans." Vel nodded, essentially. He flexed his arm. The skin was already knitting. "You know, I'm starting to think you guys just needed a really traumatic wake-up call." Nesric didn't deny it. There was a knock against the doorframe. Relak entered, arms folded behind its back, posture as formal as ever. "We have reviewed the reports," it said. "Your actions over the past week have been categorized as exceptional by both Trelvani High Command and the United Diplomatic Assembly." Aaron waved a hand. "I didn't do it for a medal." "No," Relak said, "you did it because you were the only one who didn't hesitate. That distinction matters." Vel offered him a small data chip. "This contains the updated emergency protocols, required viewing for all Trelvani medical personnel assigned to human contacts." Aaron slid the chip into his pocket. "I'd be lying if I said I wasn't curious how you translated stapler to the leg into policy." Nesric looked genuinely proud. "We labeled it Procedure H-Save-1, Human Severe Exsanguination Variant 1. Catchy." Relak stepped closer. "There is one more matter. As of this rotation, the Trelvani Council has approved a joint medical initiative. You're being offered co-directorship of the Human Integration Wing aboard this cruiser." Aaron blinked. "You want me to stay?" "Yes," Relak said, "not as a patient, as a teacher." He leaned back against the wall, exhaling slowly. "I'm not a bureaucrat. I can teach field response, maybe some triage theory, but I'm not exactly textbook material." "We don't need a textbook," Vel said. "We need someone who doesn't freeze." Aaron looked around the room. The same medics who had once recoiled at the sight of a scrape were now measuring coagulation speeds and discussing platelet bonding. The kit in his lap was proof of something more than improvement. It was trust. "All right," he said, "but I want my own supply closet, with real gauze. The stuff you use smells like seaweed." Nesric nodded. "Granted. And no more hallucination drugs." "Understood." He stood, wincing slightly as his leg twinged. "Then let's get to it." 3 weeks later, the medbay ran like a well-oiled machine. A minor explosion in the engineering bay sent a human technician in with second-degree burns. The Trelvani team had the injury cooled, cleaned, and dressed within 3 minutes. No one flinched. An outbreak of thermal rash among the amphibious crew members was treated without drama. Aaron even taught Vel how to apply hydrocortisone gel without overusing it, a lesson she took to with alarming enthusiasm. The real test came during a simulated emergency drill, staged without warning. A synthetic wound on a training android sprayed artificial blood across the medbay floor. Nezrik didn't even blink. He stepped forward, assessed the injury, and began applying pressure before the simulation script had finished loading. Aaron watched from the observation deck, arms crossed, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. Relek stood beside him. "They're not the same crew," Relek said. "No," Aaron agreed, "they're better. You've made an impact. I didn't do anything special. You changed how they see humans." Aaron turned to the viewport. Outside, stars drifted past in slow, silent arcs. "Maybe," he said, "but more importantly, I changed how they see fear." Relek was quiet for a moment. "Then you'll be missed when you leave." Aaron didn't answer right away. He tapped a finger against the railing, watching the stars. "I'm not going anywhere." Relek tilted its head. "You've decided to stay." "For now," Aaron said, "there's still too much work to do." He looked down at the medbay, where Vel was demonstrating vein compression techniques using a mock arm and a laser pointer. Peters sat nearby, flexing his still slightly crooked fingers and laughing at something too quietly to hear. Aaron turned back to the stars. "Besides," he added, "I haven't even taught them how to handle a compound fracture yet." Relek let out a sound somewhere between a hum and a sigh. "Then I suggest we order more staplers."